What's up, everybody? Welcome on in. Sooners on SI post-game podcast here. Ryan Chapman alongside Carson Field. Carson, have you thawed out? Not really thawed out. Dried out a little bit since the game?
Everything but my shoes is pretty dry at this point. But
I think you're going to have to toss those in the dryer. We're here to recap what was a wacky, exciting, but ultimately sad affair, I guess. Frustrating affair if you're an Oklahoma fan. Ole Miss comes in to Norman, wins 34-26 in rivalry week here. I know that we've all had a lot of fun with Oklahoma and Ole Miss and being rivals. I guess Lane Kiffin and David Stone tried to up that a little bit as Kiffin got the last lap there. But let's break it all down, man. It was wonky. It was crazy. Ole Miss comes out and really takes control of the first half. They ran 46 plays to Oklahoma's 23 in the first half. Oklahoma's vaunted rush defense gets shredded a little bit in the first half as they give up, 96 first half rushing yards to Ole Miss, whereas you turn that around, only 16 first half rushing yards for Oklahoma. And Carson, Ole Miss comes out and you think, okay, they kind of really grabbed life by the horns. Now, I told Aber up in the press box, I was like, we are one drive away from you really starting to get off and start writing and shaping things and all that. And I looked down and, well, the next play was the Xavier Robinson rumble, 65 yards to the house. Oklahoma gets a 3 and out. Suddenly they're on top. They're leading going into the fourth quarter. Carson, we're going, oh my gosh, what is happening here? SEC. Oklahoma unable to get it done. Ole Miss marches down the field, gets the touchdown, goes back in front, and never looks back. What a wild occasion this was.
It definitely was. It just felt like the game shifted so much in the third quarter. I think an outsider would have told you OU's winning this game just based on how the game was trending, how fired up the crowd was, how well the Sooners were playing on defense. It just seemed like OU was having everything go its way, and then fourth quarter that changed.
Yeah, it was Oklahoma. They get the ball back after the big Xavier Robinson touchdown, go up a 7-play drive. 60 yards, there's a 15-yarder in there, but 6 of those 7 were rushing plays, and you're thinking, oh my gosh, Xavier Robinson's come alive. Oklahoma had made the change. Eddie Pierre-Louis for Hito Zaida at left guard. Ryan Boje, the true freshman, at right tackle. You're sitting there going, okay, what's going on here? And then I thought this was kind of like a microcosm of the game. You have Ben Arbuckle scheme up Deion Burks into the flats in the 2-point conversion, trying to go up 3. John Mateer sees it, obviously, that's where the play is supposed to go, kind of skids it in there, doesn't give Deion Burks really a chance to get after it. And then from there, it was Ole Miss that was able to go on this big, long march. Oklahoma in 3rd and 1, 4th and 1. Chambliss is able to help pick up the first down. Then the big 40-yard play happens, and you're going, oh, brother. Get to 3rd and 8, kind of in the red zone. Chambliss picks up 10 yards on the ground. 3rd and 8, 10 yards on the ground. It felt like that was the difference when Ole Miss needed those big plays. Trinidad Chambliss, he wasn't perfect. He had missed a couple. There were a couple of big-time plays that he missed out on. But more times than not, it felt like when it needed it in the biggest moment, Ole Miss made the play, Oklahoma did.
Yeah, I'm sure no one knows this, but D2 transfer from Ferris State, he does not look like a D2 player. I mean, this was his 6th start. He's now thrown for more than 250 yards in each start. It felt like, you're right. I mean, he was not perfect. He completed 55% of his passes. That's not great, but when you look at his ability to make plays when needed, and I think a big part of the completion percentage was some throwaways, some tipped balls. Credit to the OU defense for those. But Chambliss made those plays a lot with his legs when needed, and that went into struggles on 3rd down, 4th down for the Sooners, and that ultimately a big reason why they came out on the short stick.
Yeah, Oklahoma only sacked Chambliss once. The fumble went down as a team rush, so would have been, I guess, technically 2 maybe, but just 1 that sacked there. Chambliss ends up with 53 rushing yards, which I thought was everything you need to know. That Brent Venables' accurate depiction of Trinidad Chambliss, which is runs just enough to piss you off. Well, there are a lot of fans today, I think, that were pretty frustrated. At the end of the day, Ole Miss puts up 431 yards of offense. Brent Venables in postgame immediately he said, 3rd downs, 4th downs, 3rd downs, 4th downs. I told my staff that's what was going to matter this week. 9 of 21 on 3rd down, 2 of 3 on 4th down. You flip that around, 4 of 14 for Oklahoma on 3rd down, 1 of 3 on 4th down. And when they go heads up, it just felt like Lane Kiffin. Today was the day, it felt like I thought both OCs won in different ways. Like Lane Kiffin and Brent Venables going heads up, that's going to be tough when your defense gives up 32 points when you don't count the safety. I thought that Ben Arbuckle put stuff there, and John Mateer came out, Carson, and completed 10 of his first 11, had the big completion to Satania on the second play of the game, and then later came back and had the long touchdown completion, but then went cold, 6 of 18 for Mateer in the second half. It felt like the second things started to go poorly today, he got sped up. He started missing receivers. He's not seeing the field very well, Carson, and I think that was a large part due to outside of the third quarter. It was the Xavier Robinson show. The offense just did not move.
Yeah, I mean, Robinson was, as you mentioned, the bright spot of the offense. And Mateer, you got to wonder, is it still physical? Is it mainly mental? My guess is it's the latter of those. I think it's more mental, maybe getting that confidence back. As we talked about on this week's lead up to this game, he had kind of a modest game against South Carolina last week, which we all agreed that was a good thing. He didn't need to put up those big flashy numbers. And I felt like the moment got a little too big for him today, just coming back from the injury. Obviously had a bad game against Texas a few weeks ago. Just was not the same quarterback that we saw to start the game. We saw some of that, oh my gosh, this guy really is one of the best quarterbacks in the nation early on. Didn't see that late in the game. Underthrew, obviously, the Hail Mary attempt. There were just some flat-out misses. I know one deep, I think it was to Gibson, just flat-out missed. And I think I'm going to go down with it was more mental than physical, probably.
I think it's, if I'm doing it like 90-10, mental over physical.
Right.
Now, Mateer not even getting the Hail Mary to the end zone.
That was interesting.
That was not great. That's not what we've seen at this point this year as far as Mateer going. Not that he's like connected on a ton of deep balls, but even some of the overthrows, it's like he has the distance usually to make that thing happen. But it was such a weird start to the game, man. Ole Miss and Oklahoma, they come out, go on big, long drives, settle for field goals. You're thinking, okay, second possession of the game, Mississippi, the 8-play, 75-yard drive, get all the way down there. Then they trade punts. Oklahoma goes 3 and out. Ole Miss, the 7 plays, but only goes 27 yards. You're sitting there like, okay, this is really starting to settle in. What can Oklahoma's offense do to get into rhythm? And you had, on the second pass of the game, that 39-yard completion to Satania, but then it was the big strike for Oklahoma. John Mateer, which this was probably like the canary in the coal mine today, even though he connects with Satania for a 79-yard touchdown or whatever it was. Jaron Kanik, if John Mateer had looked to his left, Kanik was wide open. No linebacker went with him. No safety went with him. It didn't even look like, you know how when the defense turns around and goes, oh no, and tries to scramble. There wasn't even anyone really working back Kanik's way. It worked out. Mateer's able to direct traffic, and he directed Isaiah Satania into the open field, and Satania showed off the track speed from there. But after that exchange, you're thinking, okay, big play, everything comes alive, defense comes out, gets a 4 and out, and then that's where things kind of got wobbly. And in the SEC, man, it feels like we've seen this all across the country, and we got Texas and Mississippi State in overtime right now, with the Auburn, Arkansas back and forth. Much like last week, at the end of the second quarter, where Oklahoma had that little wobble, then sustained, like each team in this conference is going to have a run at some point, and each team's going to have probably 10 minutes of football. They're like, well, what's happening? It felt like for Oklahoma, that 10 minutes was at the start of the second quarter. They have the punt. Satania gets the ball off one hop, basically falls forward. It's going to be a ball at 13. Flag. Jacoby Johnson called for a hold on the punt return. Okay, so the back team gets their own goal line. Then it's an illegal formation, so now it's first and down from the 2-yard line. And John Mateer, after the game, basically said that they have some checks at the line of scrimmage. He checks out of a play, but he checks out into an outside run. Torrey Blaylock not able to just put his foot in the grass and go forward. Then the safety happens. Then it's the 12-play, 47-yard field goal drive. It just felt like that sucked all the life out of the stadium, man, as Ole Miss really took control there.
Yeah, no, I went to the media workroom at halftime thinking this game should be a lot worse than 22-10. I mean, that very well could have been a touchdown drive after the safety. Instead it was 3. But yeah, it just felt like all that early momentum that they got from that big play by Satania just wiped out super quickly. And I mean, running an HB stretch by the goal line will do that. Not really sure what went into that read and why they thought that was the right thing to do there. But that was huge. And you can't really say it doomed them, though, because, I mean, they took the lead, got that spark in the third quarter. Just kind of a baffling, just dismal last few minutes of the half.
Yeah, and you look at it, too, and I thought that, some of the differences in that first half were on full display. On that field goal drive right after the safety, you had 2 3rd and 10s. One of it, completion over the middle of the field for 20 yards. Another was the 3rd and 10 in the first half where Chambliss scrambles for 15 yards. It looked like you had a couple guys take some bad angles, maybe slip a little bit type thing. That's what Ole Miss was doing, and that's a big part of, Brent Venables talked about 3rd downs, 4th downs. Kip Lewis talked about 3rd downs, 4th downs. Robert Chris Jennings talked about 3rd down, 4th down. That was part of, I think, why Ole Miss was able to stay on the field for such a long time and double Oklahoma up in plays. Then you look back and the next play or the next drive for Oklahoma, they're going for it on 4th and 5. They decide to, that was when they come out of the timeout, and basically you throw a bunch of guys that haven't been on the field a ton, Ivan Carry-on, you go into some big, jumbo look. Instead of running it, they run a little bit of a play action boot for John Mateer, and he's just not able to get the ball out quickly. It looked like the actual play design was fine. It looked like guys were open, and Mateer didn't pull the trigger, ends up eating a sack, and that's when some of the groans kind of started. And it was just one of these things where on the first drive, Oklahoma had a 3rd and 1, gets stuck. That's a bad Ole Miss defense, or the second drive, excuse me, not the first drive, the second drive for Oklahoma. Ole Miss comes into this 98th in rushing defense, gets the stuff there, gets the big play on the goal line. You turn that around. Oklahoma's defense, it felt like Kyron Lacey was breaking tackles. Trinidad Chambliss was breaking tackles in the first half, and it was like, what is going on here? Like Ole Miss, in the strength on strength, Ole Miss is winning that. In the weakness on weakness, Ole Miss is winning. Like that. That's why the first half just felt so long and so bad.
Yeah, they couldn't find an identity on the ground, which I thought was interesting considering how bad Ole Miss's run defense has been. Mateer's decision making and thought processing not as quick as it's been, shown by that 4th down play. I thought that was kind of a bizarre. I was obviously on the field, kind of zoomed in on Mateer, didn't really see how open his receivers were, but it felt like he could have gotten that out a lot quicker than he did.
He's kind of trying to throw it, you know what I mean?
Right.
Like, even on a 4th down, in that area of the field, you don't want to arm punt it or anything, or do something dumb, but even if you get it out and try and get it into the dirt.
You don't want to eat that sack.
Yeah.
But yeah, it felt like the advantages they should have had, they really didn't. And I mean, Ole Miss's offense is great. I don't want to take anything away from that. But there was just lapses in this defense that we really haven't seen. I mean, sort of saw them against Texas, but this was the first time that OU has gone against a really good quarterback with a very good offense. Obviously, Lenora Sellers last week. That South Carolina offense is in shambles. This week, dual threat, good quarterback with a good offensive line. Expose some things that OU secondary needs to work on, too.
Yeah, well, and I think that you saw as well, Oklahoma comes out, and their first possession of the 3rd quarter, awful, terrible. It was so bad that Ole Miss basically gifted Oklahoma a field goal because Lane decided he wanted to go for it on 4th and 1. I thought the only bad stuff that Lane Kiffin did today was, I understand they've had trouble scoring, not just in the red zone, but inside the 5-yard line. Chambliss has had some issues with passes getting batted down. They brought Austin Simmons in a couple of times. Austin Simmons missed a wide open touchdown and then screwed something else up. On that 4th and 1, deep back in their own territory. They've got all the quarterbacks on the field, and they decide direct snap to Lacey, and that didn't go well. And the kind of day it had been, Oklahoma took over on the plus 15 and had to kick the field goal from the plus 24. They went backwards. It ended up being a
minus 9 yards and 3 points in the first 2 drives of that half.
Just
crazy.
And the 3 points were just a gift. And and after that, Oklahoma's defense, I guess, did a really good job of rallying to force field goals instead of touchdowns. Because I thought that the offense v defense matchup outside of the 3rd quarter when they started to play comparable football for Ole Miss looked a lot worse on the field than it actually ended up being on the scoreboard, which is a credit to Oklahoma's defense for bouncing back. But yeah, I think you saw Lane Kiffin had no respect for Oklahoma's offense, and probably rightfully so up to that point, up until Xavier Robinson comes into the game. Xavier Robinson, Oklahoma had made the changes with Derek Simmons going down. It had to be Ryan Foje at right tackle instead of Luke Baclenko. That's what they decided to go with. Early start of the 2nd quarter, basically, Eddie Pierre-Louis comes in for Heath Ozida, and it kind of broke free there in the 3rd quarter. That was a fantastic run by Xavier Robinson. I don't know how much you could tell of it from your vantage point, but he gets kind of caught up in the middle, an arm tackle that he runs through and bounces outside, and suddenly he just splits the safety in the corner and is able to outdash everybody to the end zone. And suddenly, Carson, for the first time in an hour and a half, it felt like there was some life and energy in the stadium.
There was a lot of life and energy, and that play was so weird because it looked like, oh, this is just another run that's going to go for maybe a yard up the middle. And then you just see Xavier Robinson streaking to the left side, or I guess right side from my vantage point. And about 10 yards downfield, I was like, this guy's gone. And sure enough, houses it all the way there. That was a great run. And Robinson, I mean, he finished the day. You even take away that 65-yard run, averaged more than 5 yards a carry. He was efficient. He looked good. I think he caught 2 passes for 27 yards, too. So, I mean, he did his part today.
Yeah, he did his part, certainly. And from there, then it was like only ran the ball 9 times in the first half. By the time that they got back into it and then Ole Miss scored, it almost felt like Oklahoma was trying to run it a little bit, didn't pop off a big one, and then got into like a passing situation. And that's where you get to just the tough day for John Mateer. 6 of 18 in the second half, like we mentioned, and you saw against Michigan, it wasn't 100% perfect, but he made big-time plays when you needed to on third downs, the big long drive at the end of the game where he was doing it on the ground, a couple of efficient short passes. You didn't really see the short passing game, and I don't really know what the answer to that was. I mean, Ben Arbuckle and John Mateer didn't really have an answer for why the short passing game went away. I don't know if that was like a lack of faith in John Mateer to get the ball out quickly and thinking too much. I don't know what that was, Carson, but then suddenly you get to the point where getting the ball back with like 4.5 minutes left and then certainly a minute left. Oklahoma's chasing the game and needs to feel like they need to pass down the field. But once Ole Miss kind of took back over and stabilized a little bit, it really felt like almost panic mode from John Mateer at least. I don't know if, like, there was plenty of time and they had timeouts on the next to last drive Oklahoma did, but it just felt like Mateer kind of got sped up, happy feet, panicked. It looked like some of the quarterback play we saw last year from Jackson Arnold and from Michael Hawkins Jr., which it didn't make sense because it wasn't like Ole Miss was consistently getting like a ton of pressure or anything like that. They finished with 3 sacks. I just don't know how it so quickly dropped off for John Mateer today.
Yeah, I don't either. Part of me thinks it goes back to that mental component, maybe just still not just physically recovering, but mentally recovering from the injury and missing a little bit of time. But you're right, he seemed very flustered. It's a shootout, and I think he just needed to take that mentality, like, yes, they're going to get theirs, but I'm going to get mine. We just have to score more points. Honestly, we just need to have the ball last the way the game is going, and that's not really a knock on OU's defense. I mean, you saw Georgia last week give up touchdowns or field goals on Ole Miss's first 5 possessions. They do it against good and bad defenses. That's a really good Ole Miss offense. And OU just needed to realize that. Like, we just have to answer these guys. John Mateer needs to realize, I've done this before. I did this against Auburn, Michigan, 2 very good defenses, both run and pass sound. He just didn't have that same moxie today. Didn't seem like he had the same confidence today. And ultimately, he couldn't sustain a touchdown drive at the end of the game because of it.
Yeah, I don't know. Last week he was so game injury, and it was fine. It was not like a negative when we say that. We talked about it, right? That Torrey Blaylock was running, Xavier Robinson was good, stuff like that. Torrey Blaylock sounds like he got banged up early and wasn't able to be super effective. Ended up only getting the 6 carries. But you look at it, and I think the concerning thing is that at no point did it feel like John Mateer in the second half was super confident. You're going to Knoxville next week to play a pretty high-powered offense. You got a bye week. Then you go to Alabama, which I know that Ty Simpson, that Alabama offense, misfired a little bit today against South Carolina. But 3 weeks from now, I guess 3 Saturdays from now, that's going to be another like really high-powered offense. Like, the way that they played today, Oklahoma can't win a game in the 30s. It just felt like that. Like in that they can get better, and John Mateer can certainly play better. If he played the way he played against Michigan, and you had some growth and things like that from the running game, stuff like that, that's a team that can go win a game in the 30s. If you get this John Mateer again, missing guys, not seeing the field, he talked a lot about his eyes today in post-game, much like the Texas game, then it's like that's going to heap so much pressure on this defense, which this is the first like elite offense that they played, and I thought they failed that test as far as 32 points allowed. Yeah, they rallied for the field goals, but this was not a defense that felt like they were consistently having success. It felt like they were rallying to stop the bleeding and force the field goal as opposed to really going out there and asserting themselves over and over and over again, which is what we've seen for so long. It felt a lot like that third quarter against Texas, that if you asked me, does Ole Miss get this big play, I'd be like, yeah, probably.
Yeah, no, I agree. I mean, I just said a minute ago that good defenses even get bashed by Ole Miss. Good defenses do, elite ones don't. And today, Oklahoma played like a good defense. I mean, they had 14 tackles for loss. That's still very good. Kendall Daniels, I thought he specifically looked really good today. Some good play from the line. it just wasn't consistent like it was against Auburn, South Carolina, Michigan. It wasn't the same level of consistency. I thought the secondary at times got burned. That said, Cortland Guillory had some really good plays too.
I thought Cortland was awesome.
Cortland had some fantastic plays, especially early on. But the secondary was not perfect. Both of the Bowens, I know, didn't have perfect days. This was, I don't know if I'd say it was the most human that the defenses looked, because I think you could argue Texas was just as bad of a performance, because Texas's offense is not the same beast that Ole Miss's offense is. I think we do have to give a lot of flowers to Trinidad Chambliss, Lane Kiffin, and the way he runs his offenses. I mean, it's not an easy test for a defense like Oklahoma's, but you would have thought they would have been able to put a little more pressure on, stop some of those third and longs where all Chambliss had to do was scramble, and boom, he's got his. So that's how I'd assess it. I wouldn't say it was just a dreadful performance, but from what we've seen against Auburn, Michigan, stuff like that, you would have expected a little bit better.
How big do you think the loss of Kobe McKenzie was today? As he exited in the first half, didn't play, obviously, after that exit. And Brent talked about that they don't have, 9,000 checks at the line of scrimmage, but they do have certain things here or there as far as handing this guy off, get this guy lined up here, that while they have faith in Samuel Siegel, Kobe's that leader. And I wonder how much of that, because there were a couple of moments like the big fourth down conversion on that long drive after Oklahoma went back ahead. Brent Venables basically said that we didn't properly check things off the way that we wanted to. The safety in the corner is supposed to switch. They didn't. That opens up things like that. It felt like Kobe was a big loss in that area.
Yeah, no, Kobe's a fantastic player, and everything we've heard about him is that he's just this amazing leader. And that's not saying Sammy Omosigho's not a great leader for this team too. But Kobe, being the older guy, has gotten more playing time in the past, more of a commander of this defense. I mean, that's a huge loss. So getting him out of the game, I mean, that's not great. I feel like the linebacker position is deep enough that it shouldn't make that much of an impact. Omosigho, as we've talked about, has been pretty consistently great this year, so it shouldn't have, but I think it did make a pretty big difference.
We've come in so many times, Carson, to these post games, and you look up and down the defensive stats, and you had Owen Heineke against Michigan, and that was a lot because he was the leading tackler, because I thought the defensive line did such a good job of clearing the path and making it really easy for the linebackers. And Kip Lewis is your leading tackler today with 12 tackles. Then it's Robert Spears-Jennings with 11, Owen Heineke with 8, Peyton Boone with 6. Didn't feel like that was a result, though, today of this defensive line knocking everybody back and just guys cleaning up, making tons of plays. It felt like Ole Miss, now it wasn't every single play by any means. It was a good battle there, but it felt like Ole Miss's offensive line won a ton. And with that, it was guys having to step up and fill and falling backwards when they're trying to tackle Lacey and having to make tackles downfield in the secondary. It felt like it was much more that as opposed to the linebackers being able to play free, loose, come up and just total all these tackles for loss.
No, I agree. And, I mean, that's kind of what we talked about a minute ago as far as this was a new test for the OU defense. Really hadn't seen a downfield passer with help. Seeing that with an Ole Miss offense that has Trinidad Chambliss, a good receiving core, a big tight end, an offensive line. I mean, they were able to do more. And I think maybe some of the D-lines lesser production today as a result of, oh crap, this is a team that can run with their quarterback, run with the running back, throw it to the receivers downfield. I mean, just so much more versatile than any of the offenses that OU has faced to this point. And I think maybe that's part of the reason that maybe the D-line just had to adjust. Maybe they had trouble adjusting. So I thought that was pretty interesting.
Yeah, and you just look at it. We've seen that when they're not playing great complementary football as well, Ole Miss was on the field for basically 19 minutes of the first half, and this defense, there have been moments where it's gotten worn down, and it could still in a worn down state rally for forcing the field goal and stuff like that. But I just think about the Tennessee offense and the Alabama offense is the next two that they're going to get. Those two units, I don't think Oklahoma's going to Knoxville or going to Tuscaloosa and holding those groups to under 20 points or stuff like that. And while I think that's a ridiculously high standard for specifically any college football defense, even the best ones, you just look back to it and go, this Oklahoma offense still has a ton to figure out. In a weird way, man, if I had come in here and said, hey, they're going to put up 359 yards, and they're going to find a way to have one of their running backs run for 109 yards, we would have been like, oh my gosh,
it's probably a win.
They've built on the South Carolina experience. They're probably winning that top 10 game at home, but I think the thing that is going to be tough for everybody coming in on Sunday morning when they look at all the film is that you had a top 10 team. You had absorbed their punch. You had stormed all the way back. You had them what you felt like might be on the road. And Oklahoma was just trying to extend it to 2 possessions. There was never like a knockout opportunity, and it just slipped away.
It really did. It just, all that momentum just squashed. I thought that was the weirdest thing, that as soon as the field flipped pretty much, it felt like Ole Miss had control of the game again. Maybe, I don't know if that feeds into them not facing the student section anymore, but all of that life that they had just so quickly, and I don't think it was just one play. It felt like it was a beatdown. Just, okay, we've got these guys in a 3rd and long, Chambliss scrambles, boom, they have a 1st down and goal. Just slow punches, I felt like withered away kind of the crowd's impact. The defense, I mean, you can only bend and don't break so many times before you give up a big one. That obviously happened with that last touchdown that he threw. And I felt like, yeah, it was just kind of a slow dissolving of the energy that OU was able to build.
The straw that broke the back was Isaiah Satania. I mean, Oklahoma.
Well, that's a big one.
They get the stop, right? They're coming back, down 5. Hey, Satania had put together. First off, if he had just fair caught the punt, they were going to have pretty solid field position, plenty of time, timeout, all that stuff. It was going to be you're going to have a couple bites at the apple too. Not no pressure, but as far as a late game, getting the ball back situation, as good as you'd like. By that time, too, there were moments where like the sun was even peeking out in spots, so you weren't going to have any elements throwing downfield. Balls are going to be dry, stuff like that. And Satania tries to kind of hurdle a guy right near midfield, gets popped, the ball comes out, Ole Miss falls on it, and that was the one that Kip Lewis said after the game, that the mood just kind of swung in that moment, and I think that you could kind of see Oklahoma's defense. Did they force a field goal on that drive? Yeah, but it went from 5 to 8.
Yeah.
Oklahoma had already blown 1 2-point conversion. You could just feel that 8 points felt like a mountain to climb.
It felt like a loss at that point, and it's easy. There are so many things that happened in this game that you almost forget about the fumble on that punt return that caused them to go up 8 points eventually. And on the return, Satania, I mean, to his credit, definitely had a lane, had a good return going until he got stripped. But it's something that he hasn't been perfect about. Obviously, he had that fumble on the punt against Michigan. He's dropped some passes this year, and that's not to take away from the valuable player that he's been. Obviously, the top receiver for this team had the huge play. But, man, that's one you got to hold on to, or at least hold on to until you hit the ground. It was a game-changing play.
Well, it's just the 2 best teams Oklahoma's played this year, they found ways to lose.
Yep.
It's like good teams figure that stuff out, and Michigan is probably going to hang around, and they're biting at the bottom of the rankings at 25, 24. Mm-hmm. Auburn stinks. I mean, they're not like a.
They found a way today.
They found a way. Well, they found the way by benching Jack Snarl. That's how they found a way. Shout out to Kenai Walker for the pick 6 there and dueling pick 6s, but like Auburn, that's a team that you look at and go like Oklahoma found ways to stabilize and win at South Carolina, found ways to put it together in the 4th quarter, responding from Auburn, found a way to take Michigan's punch when they came out and had the really, really long 75-yard run and stabilize again and avoid some special team stuff. Auburn's a team that like has over and over and over again just been like, nope, I can't figure that thing out. Yep. And Oklahoma had some Auburn vibes today as far as what you look at. I know that the roughing the passer on Jaden Jackson was a bad call, but you're like off the field, either forced a really, really long field goal or stuff like that, and the contact like happens. And again, I think it was a bad call, but it's like it feels like this team just falls into situations like that over and over again, which is the mark of not a good football team, certainly not a great one.
Yeah, no, it comes down to coaching at the end of the day. You've got to be more disciplined than that. Even, I agree with you, it didn't look like it was a roughing the passer.
I don't even think that Chambliss was like done with his follow-through.
I don't either.
It's like...
But at some point, you do have to be conscientious, knowing that some refs have a quicker whistle than others. But you don't want to fault Jaden Jackson too much for that. But it just feels like, man, they can't get out of their own way certain times. And you got OU fans have got to have so many questions after an ending like today's.
I mean, 8 flags, and it's just 52 yards of offense. But it just felt like there were some random substitution penalties that you're like, how are you not getting guys off the field? Because there were 2 substitution penalties. R. Mason Thomas wiped away that was before the punt that had the Jacoby Johnson flag, but R. Mason Thomas wiped away where Chambliss had basically like fallen down into his arms with an offside. Now, Oklahoma was still able to force the punt, but it's that hidden yardage thing. Rick Mibbles talks about all the time, right? That 5 yards doesn't show up in the total yards of offense, but it moved Oklahoma 5 yards closer so that when that holding goes half the distance and then your illegal formation goes half the distance, it backs you all the way up. And then you just look at things like that and you're just like, again, it's the details, it's the little things. And what does Brent Venables always preach as well? Like the middle 8, it's another instance where like right before halftime and coming out the other side of halftime, felt like Ole Miss was calm, cool, collected, took all the momentum coming in, and Oklahoma comes at a halftime and goes 3 and out. It was a terrible possession at a halftime. No,
that was a brutal possession to watch, so much so that I missed the first play of that coming back from the media workroom, and it only lasted for like a minute after that. Just super quick. This is not what you want to see after such a stale, aside from that 76-yard reception from Satania, such a stale half. It was just as stale as that was. Obviously, the response was better in the minutes after that, but it just felt like you've got to be more motivated than that. And I don't know what causes that for them to be so stale after not having a better response.
Well, it felt like too early, especially, maybe not coming out of halftime. Some of the stuff that you saw last week from Ben Arbuckle, which is like, I thought he was doing a better job. We had talked about it. Playing to the strengths of the offense, trying to put guys in good positions, things like that. You had 2 freshman tackles, and Fasusi started a couple of games, but Boj felt like they were trying to stretch early and run outside. And I was like, guys, I don't know if putting those guys in that position, why not like run up the middle first and try and see if you can run behind the strength of your offensive line and make things happen there. Then as Ben Arbuckle scheming guys open and John Mateer starts to miss, it felt like they went away from that as well. It just seemed like last week when Ben Arbuckle had a really good answer for everything that was happening, didn't have it this week, and you're kind of back to like, okay, outside of the couple, at least they got a couple of explosive plays. That's something they've been missing, right? It's the big explosives. But outside of that, Deion Burks, 4 catches for 32 yards, felt like a big non-factor. Kanik, 3 catches for 30 yards. You could have just copy and pasted the 79-yarder for Satania over to Jaron Kanik.
Right.
Well, should have gone anyway. Xavier Robinson, a couple nice grabs out of the backfield, but like you look at Giovanni Gibson, thrown at him 4 times, only makes 1 catch for 3 yards, and it didn't feel like that was Gibson. I mean, the last drive of the game that ends up with the failed Hail Mary, you have Gibson on the sideline with plenty of room to run out in front of him where he can make the determination of, do I step out when I need to save clock? John Mateer just misses that. It felt like you couldn't get like Gibson to build into this or Burks to build into it because Mateer was missing all over the place.
Yeah, I do think a big part of it was just the accuracy. The decision making is obviously a big part of that too. Not getting the ball out quick enough. But you're right, Gibson on that last drive absolutely had space. Or was that second to last drive?
That was the last drive on that. Now, Mateer missed him on both of those drives, but the really, really bad miss on the sideline where Gibson looked like he had some space to, even if it was just picking up 10 yards and stepping out of bounds.
Right, and I feel like part of it, going back to what you said about playing to the offense's strength, it was clear that the deep ball, aside from that first completion to Satania to open the game, the deep ball was not a strength of the offenses today. Utilize the speed of guys like Isaiah Satania, Deion Burks. I know you didn't really have the chance to do that in the last drive because you're fighting against the clock with no timeouts. Drive before that, though, utilize some of those screen passes. You got guys like Satania, Burks, really fast players that in South Carolina we saw some of those, like, oh, that's only a 2-yard completion, but it goes for about 15 yards after that. We didn't see a lot of that today. Obviously, kind of saw that on that 76-yard touchdown. That wasn't a long pass, but it was taken a long way. Utilizing that, I think, would have helped Mateer maybe get a little comfortable, get some easier completions, and then maybe that leads to the bigger shot. Maybe it doesn't. Maybe it leads to more of that, but I think that would have been more effective than what we saw in the late stages of this game.
Yeah, it just felt like it felt like we went into a portal to last year a little bit at times, not totally, but in the fourth quarter, but especially like the first half, it was like, man, where are these just like easy throws to scheme up? But at the same time, I guess if you're not hitting those easy throws, then from an offensive coordinated perspective, I don't know, without going back and being able to just like really, really watch it, how many times it was a miss for John Mateer as far as like just seeing somebody wide open and missing it. But it's like, it becomes a thing where it's like, if your quarterback's missing, it's really, really tough to truly build an offense outside of like, feed Xavier Robinson, I really, really like the Eddie Pierre-Louis left guard. It felt like we just know at least that he might fire off the ball too aggressively, but I think the Oklahoma fans would take that as opposed to some of what they've seen. And it becomes like, what can you build offense-wise for this Tennessee game? Because, again, we've seen it all across the league. I don't think that Oklahoma's suddenly not going to be in one-possession games or anything like that. Like, they're going to have shots in all these games the rest of the way. But right now, like, you have faith that, like, the defense is going to make enough stops to give you a chance, but another day where the defense doesn't really get you a turnover, another day where Oklahoma, like, loses the turnover battle, and then John Mateer just not able to consistently make it happen. I don't know what the formula is, because if your defense isn't going to create a big-time turnover or something like that, you're reliant on coaches to do the Lane Kiffin of, I'm just going to go for it here, where I think the rest of the way, Heupel, Kalen DeBoer, you look at Drink and Brian Kelly, I think that they're just going to be like, let's go the other way. We don't respect the Oklahoma offense, so we're just going to continue to punt it back and back and back and not, like, limit the chance for, like, a bad play to happen.
Yeah, no, the one building point is Robinson, to your point. I think he's a pass catcher. He's shown that. He had that touchdown against Temple, too. He's shown that he can be a good pass catcher, and we're finally starting to see the rusher that we saw against Alabama last year, late in the season last year. I think they need to utilize him a little bit more, especially if Blaylock's banged up. He obviously was able to play later in the game after his injury, so should be able to go next week against Tennessee. Obviously, we won't know all of those details until later in the week. But I think Robinson's somewhere you can build, and getting Mateer comfortable. I think that's a big thing. I don't think another modest game like South Carolina would be a bad thing, where he's not forced to carry the weight of the game. But that's not a guarantee with how good these defenses are. I mean, you look at probably the, quote, worst team on the schedule, LSU. That's a team with a dang good defense. They're going to have to get creative to win that game, even if it is first to 15, first to 20 wins that game. They're going to have to find ways to score, and I'm not as confident seeing that against a decent Ole Miss defense today. There was a lot of sputtering today. That can't happen against Mizzou, LSU, Bama, Tennessee, obviously, so it doesn't get easier, and they're going to have to find new things, but I think Robinson's at least somewhere you can start.
Somewhere you can start. If it's some mental stuff and not being able to, and getting too sped up, I also don't think these next 2 weeks, like South Carolina, it was a fine crowd. I think a lot of the fans were, we talked about it, more interested in what's happening here, this is bad, boo, fire Mike Shula, let's go to the fair. That was kind of like the South Carolina fan experience. Not going to be that way next week in Knoxville.
Yep.
Not going to be that way when you head to Tuscaloosa here in a couple of weeks. And so if you can't get Xavier Robinson rolling early, then things start to build, and that's more pressure on John Mateer. How does he respond in that kind of atmosphere, that kind of situation? We'll see. And you look at it, and I don't think that suddenly things are going to get like a much better along this offensive line. Brett Venables was asked about Sexton after the game, and he kind of was like, yeah, I mean, he could come back. He still hasn't played 4 games and has another year left, so we'll kind of see there. So that was kind of like, okay, is Sexton going to redshirt and go?
It's kind of a non-answer.
Yeah, it was actually the most telling thing as far as just like, oh, he'll be back. But actually, like, throwing it out in the air, like, is that redshirt going to come? Maybe, maybe not. We'll see with Derek Simmons if he's able to make it back. Sounds like it was a concussion-type issue, and so we'll see what that thing looks like. We all know it's hard to even – I don't like to speculate on that.
No, for sure.
The brain stuff, it's tough. So hope everything's good there. But you look through the rest of it, I didn't think that corner was a big issue today. Gentry Williams not able to go today.
Guillory was fantastic.
I thought Guillory was great. I thought Eli Bowen was okay. I didn't think he was like, oh, that's the reason. I thought Peyton had a worse game on the back end. He was replaced by Jaden Hardy at some point there late. And you look at it elsewhere, it's like Javonte Barnes not going to fix this offense. Doubt he plays. Taylor Tatum, who popped up as out, who'd been banged up all over the place, not going to suddenly come in and fix this offense. You look around, it's like these are the guys you're rolling with, and you're going to have to piece.
We're not even going to throw out Jada Knott anymore. We're past those days.
We are not the broadcast crew from last week's game against South Carolina that apparently was like the answer is on to everything. Oh, we got lights up behind us. That's how late we're hanging out here. But yeah, it's one of those things that this is the crew. This is what it is.
Yep.
And they got to start building something together here because, like we said, I think they're going to be in these games. The defense is that good still. But if you play like you're going to play today, I don't have faith they're going to win many of those games.
Good defense isn't going to cut it against Alabama. Elite defense is. And we've seen that. It's not something that can't be done by this defense, but elite defense against Ty Simpson it's either him or Fernando Mendoza for the Heisman at this point. He is electric. That line's good. They have to be at their best in that game. But I'm looking too far. Tennessee has a great offense. Joey Aguilar's been really good this year. Heupel's an offensive mind. That's not an easy one either. So, I mean, this defense for this team, I mean, they're 6-2 at this point, and we talked about early in the season, this team has an argument for the playoff at 9-3. They're a lock at 10-2. So, I mean, it's not done. This season's not over.
They're not making it's not done. But they're not making it to Atlanta. They're not making it to the playoff.
We can't see what we saw today, and there be any sliver of hope. But mathematically, they're not done. It just has to be so far different from what we saw today for that to even be something you can dream about.
Yeah, Tennessee up 14-7 early on Kentucky on the road there. Yeah, they've got to piece a lot of stuff together. Here's the good news. Kent State put a win on the board today, so that's the playoff resume.
Did Temple beat Tulsa?
I don't know. Let me look and see if Temple beat Tulsa here, because we will find that bad boy. Oh, South Florida managed to lose to Memphis. Shout out to everybody going there. But yeah, this is one of those things. Temple did survive the Tulsa scare in overtime.
5 wins.
So Temple, Kent State winners. Auburn put one on the board today. Michigan's up early.
Strength of record is just skyrocketing.
Strength of record. The playoff resume is great. Screw it. Put it on to the side. They'll flush it. They'll finish.
Let's book some tickets to Miami.
Yeah, let's. We're gonna go to Bobby Dodd Stadium. It'll be Oklahoma, Georgia Tech in the first round of the college football playoff. No. It's another one of those things. We didn't hear that all our goals are in front of us today in postgame because the path to Atlanta just got really, really, really murky.
Yeah.
Ole Miss basically punched their ticket to the CFP unless they have a total collapse here in some of these today. But you look around and you're going to have every opportunity. Texas had survived in overtime, like we mentioned. It's chaos every week in the SEC, but you're going to have your you're going to need the quarterback, that John Mateer that showed up at the end of the Auburn game. And we know that he can do it on a bum wheel.
And I mean, as bad as we talk about Auburn being, that's still a dang good defense. And he was electric. That was a vintage, like, stays healthy, is good the rest of the year. That's a Heisman moment. Like, that is what Heisman winners build their careers off of, moments like that. That was awesome. And I mean, we know that this guy's capable of that. We haven't seen that in a while.
It's like you said, the moxie, that confidence, and he was obviously banged up in that game, so we know that it can happen, but it just feels like right now, I don't know if it's confidence, if it's timing, or what, but certainly John Mateer needs to take a big step forward. Otherwise, it's not going to go well the rest of the way, and we will see from there. 34-26 for Ole Miss, victors over Oklahoma. Anything else you want to hit here before we regroup, pack it in?
Nothing too crazy. Powder blue helmets, top 5 in college football, in my opinion. Good job, Rebels, there. But it was soggy. Had a lot of fun out there. As always, it was a good time.
What'd you make of the Lane Kiffin David Stone moment at the end of the game? I thought that was just Lane being Lane.
It is exactly that. It's Lane being Lane. I mean,
he even said that in the postgame. He's like, "That's just me being." I think he was like something like that.
Yeah, and I mean that's part of what makes him fun. I like when coaches are a little bit different out there. I know it's leadership, quote unquote, like you don't want to be too high, like you're older than these guys. I enjoy it. That's part of the game. Like, you want to be able to talk trash. And he didn't personally insult David Stone or anything like that. That's where I would have drawn the line. You get to talk a little bit of smack as a winner. I'm fine with it.
Hey, that's what Lane basically said. Like, he was talking to me during the game. I didn't talk back, and then he came to find me after, and I let him know. And I was like, yeah, well, when you win, you get
that privilege.
Yeah, you get a little bit of that. So we will see. All right, I'm sure that we'll watch this game 2 or 3 more times and have plenty more thoughts. Those will come on Wednesday. Brent Venables will watch this game over and over again. Ben Arbuckle, they'll talk to us on Tuesday. Per usual, we'll talk to all the players on Monday night as they kind of digest and turn the page over to Tennessee. And as always, tons and tons and tons of reaction from the game, everything the players said, all that fun stuff. You can find it at Oklahoma Sooners on SI.com. Hit up the website. Plenty of stories that have come all day Saturday. They'll keep coming on Sunday. You can also watch all the player videos. Just hit the football tab and scroll all the little watch files that are there, which have the video inside of it. Those are great for you, as well as you can head to Who's YouTube page, John Hoover Media. You can see our wrap on the field, all the press conference, all that stuff. Just head to Who's YouTube, John Hoover Media. But that'll do it for us from the press box here in Norman. For Carson Field, I'm Ryan Chapman. We'll talk to you guys up next on the Sooners on SI podcast this Wednesday. See ya.